What up? Seth Miranda here. This is Adorama Rewind, and it's an understatement to say what a week it's been. Some really crazy things have happened, a lot of social things have happened, and gear news, but also gear stuff that may not cost you any money and make your game a little more elevated. So let's start it off with this. A mother is outraged after school photographer offers airbrushing services for 8-year-olds. And there were two levels of it: basic retouching, which is just like zits or whatever's going on in the kid's face, and then like premium, which even skin tones and whitens teeth or whatever else on an 8-year-old. And the mother happened to be a journalist or broadcaster in her own right. They came from the UK to Phoenix, Arizona, and then that's when they saw that this was a service being offered to school photos. So I'm wondering if there's like there's a cultural shift there, like we really focus on that kind of stuff here in America. Yeah, it's kind of like, whoa, 8-year-olds, but it's also, you have to realize these are businesses. This isn't like you're going to some fine art photographer to get a portrait made of your child. It's a huge machine of chain gunning hundreds of kids to get through school photos. Like, which background do you want? Here's a plastic comb for free, and push them in front of a camera and they get their shot. It's a business, right? So they're doing whatever they can to tack on whatever they can to make money. It's just like them selling you a car. You need that undercoating, you need it. It's just another thing they're trying to sell you, and of course you can opt out for it. What I am curious to see is how many parents did opt for it, and I wonder if later on in life the kids will be like, what did I actually look like at 8 years old? And I also wonder if you get to keep the originals and the retouch. I don't know, I'm wondering about a lot of things. A lot of things this week I'm wondering about. Let's talk about Japan. So they just made a ban on photography for tourism in a really well-known area in Kyoto. So there's these really tiny alleyways and really beautiful places. Where is it? It's right there. And a lot of tourists go there and they get all happy and take tons of pictures. And apparently they're saying they're being rude and they are affecting quality of life over there. So as far as it goes, they made a ban of no taking photos for tourists in privately owned areas, alleyways, homes, stuff like that, which is totally understandable. If you are caught trying to take photos, it's a 10,000 yen fine, which is about $90 to $100 US dollars, which isn't crazy. They're just trying to be like, hey, learn some respect, and it's cool. But you know, tourists aren't exactly known for respecting where they go. They just want to get what they can out of an area and get out of there. And we've had countless stories of people just going to a place and disrespecting it. A lot of Instagram influencers leaving garbage places or modifying an area just to get a cool photo and leaving. So I'm sure they're just trying to nip this in the bud a little bit. I don't blame them at all for that. While we're talking about bans, outside of an Arizona Supreme Court, photography is banned, and they're saying it's unconstitutional. So what they're basically saying is that on the court steps, on the building entrances and the adjacent parking areas and even the sidewalks, they're banning photography or video from taking place. They're saying it's to minimize the intimidation factor and keep the place clear. But then the other side of this is people saying, well, protesters are still allowed in that area. So you can physically take up space there, but now you're saying we can't document freedom of speech, press, all that stuff. It's a really mucky one. I'm not really sure how to go about mitigating the reasoning for both sides on this, but I can say it does seem to me that the Supreme Court is more going, hey, if we don't document all the crazy protesting going on and the chaos, it won't seem so crazy around our courthouse. And that's what I'm getting from it. But it could also have some good-hearted, we don't want people being intimidated coming into the courts and stuff. I don't know. Let's get off the social kick for a little bit and talk about some free stuff for Canon users. So we're talking about firmware updates for the 90D, the EOS RP, and some other cameras in their lineup. The 90D being a DSLR and the EOS RP being a full-frame mirrorless entry level. And people were kind of upset that there was no 24p in the video. Well, guess what? The firmware has been thrown out there for you guys to go grab it if you own these cameras. They're saying that in the future they will be doing the G7X Mark III, the G5X Mark II, and the M6 Mark II. And you can go right here to Canon's website and just get the firmware and hook up your camera, and boom, you're doing 24p in full HD. It's just everywhere, this firmware update, which is pretty cool. If you own any of these, I strongly suggest you jump on them. I mean, why not, right? And you should always stay up on updating your firmware, because sometimes there's bugs you didn't even know about or have encountered in equipment that they've ironed out. There's plenty of times that there's new equipment that has to talk to older equipment. equipment, and they fixed that communication bridge, all sorts of stuff. I know that TTL always changes on strobes every time they update firmware, so stay up on that. In more Canon news, Canon is adopting the HEIF. I don't know if they call it HEIF or HIF, but HEIF files. And people were worried they're going to ditch JPEGs. They're saying we're not going to ditch JPEGs. So what is HEIF? HEIF is high efficiency image file format. And what that's basically saying is it's a high quality format with a lot of information in it that doesn't take up more size than a traditional JPEG. So they're saying for the same file size that's taking up space in your storage, you get more color, goes from, I think goes up to 16-bit color, where JPEG only goes to 8-bit pretty much. There's some that are 12-bit, but for the most part it's 8-bit, on top of which it's just a more flexible file. And if it doesn't take as much space, then why wouldn't you switch to it? And there's been plenty of other file formats out there, like JPEG 2000, that never took off clearly in 2000, and we're in 2019. But now that Canon, which is the #1 camera manufacturer in the world, size-wise and everything, it's the most adopted out there in people's hands. If they're adopting this as a file format, then more people can adopt it, and therefore it might actually stick this time, which is pretty interesting. They're doing it in their Canon 1DX Mark III, which is their flagship camera, which is going to be a high price ticket item, but who's to say there aren't firmware updates? See the bridge there from the last story? Who says there aren't firmware updates to make a lot of other cameras take this as a file format? You'd be surprised. A lot of times when you're buying gear now, it's about the hardware, what it's capable of, and the firmware just keep on evolving and morphing. I mean, we always talk about Fuji. Out of nowhere, they gave a firmware update, and Fujifilm cameras then could do 4K video out of nowhere, and we're like, wait, what? So, yeah. Let's talk about Nikon though. So they put out an $8,000 58mm Noct lens, manual focus, and it was basically like a showpiece, a unicorn lens, you know, just to show they could do it, and it's one of those engineering feats. Well, they're actually saying the demand is way too high. They didn't think that it was going to be like this, and they had to scale back on taking orders. They started taking orders for the lens back in mid-October, October 12th or so, and it was a huge response apparently, which is kind of crazy, right? First of all, it's a Z mount lens, and how many people have a Z series, and then how many people have $8,000 to throw on top of that Z series? It's kind of crazy. They're not releasing how numbers wise how many lenses that is, but you got to wonder like what it really is. So there's still available pre-order. You can still pre-order that lens at Adorama, and if you're still looking for this crazy lens. I did use it at Photo Plus, and everyone's saying it's big and heavy, and I didn't really find it to be as much. In fact, I found it pretty awesome that the front element was like a normal size diameter for any filter size. I tried it. It was so much fun to use. Do I have $8 grand to spend on it? No. But it is a pretty cool lens that they put out there. I don't know what else to say about that. Let's jump back into some social stuff here. So this soccer player destroyed a photographer's camera. Yeah, so this guy right here, Mario Balotelli, if that's how you pronounce it, was walking off the field after being substituted during a game, and Massimo Lavati, I'm probably killing these names, I'm sorry. This is what his camera looks like after the soccer player decided to kick it off of the tripod that it was on, where it was doing a remote capture, and this photographer put it on his Instagram, his social, and that's how it spread everywhere. This is kind of nuts. I don't understand where any professional athlete or otherwise could look at someone else's equipment and go, yeah, I'm gonna trash this, especially when everyone knows camera equipment is expensive, and clearly this is gonna set someone's career back a little bit when they lose their gear. Yeah. Let's lift the mood a little bit. DJI, you're killing it. What's going on here? They're constantly putting out innovations. The gimbals, the Pocket, the Osmo series. Well, DJI put out a new Mavic Mini, which is 249 grams. It's super light. It has 2.7K video, and it has 30 minutes on the battery, which is huge. If you're not used to drone time, that's an enormous amount of time. When most batteries last for 10 minutes on drones, you have 3 times the amount of time of flying this thing and capturing video, which is great. I did actually get to use it. If you click over over here. When you check out Adorama TV, I got to go to the Hudson Valley, which is beautiful, and film with it. It's fantastic. Fernando Martinez was there with me. It was really great. The stabilization was super impressive. It wasn't that noisy of a drone. I keep getting asked those questions. The images are 12 megapixel. They look pretty good to me. The video looked beautiful, and it was super, super easy to use. And one of the things that it has is all these pre-programmed movements, so that if you're not used to flying a drone, they can still get you some sort of cinematic look with, like, you know, doing a circle and doing, you know, an infinity Google or whatever, or figure eight or whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of cool. In more technology news, Samsung had a space selfie balloon that crashed into someone's backyard in Michigan. Wow, I just cracked my knuckles. This is kind of interesting because it was a marketing ploy to sell their newest phone, and this is what we're getting to, is that we have to launch satellites into the air to sell it. So check this out. They pretty much launched this satellite, and this is a live view of the satellite looking at the Earth, and then they had this superimposed look of their phone, and what it was meant to do was you'd be able to take a selfie and then have it superimposed on this image, and then it'll be sent back to you, and then you could post it, which is kind of genius, right? Like, oh, here's some free content for you if you need something like that, and I'm sure it gets spread around. Well, this thing came back down to Earth pretty fast, and on top of all that, it got tangled in a bunch of power lines. Is this where we're at? This is how hard we need to sell phones in an age where everyone has a phone in their hand, which is probably the problem, right? Is that we're oversaturated. No one's buying the next phone so quickly. This is nuts. But hey, in some more cost-effective news, if you're someone that likes Aperture, the Mac software that was like, you know, Lightroom, Photoshop type of stuff, they found a app that lets you use the older Mac softwares like iPhoto and Aperture on OS Catalina. So if you go here, DP Review, grab this one, you can just grab the app and it will actually run Aperture on newer systems. And this is cool. I think Aperture was ripped out of the Apple lineup back in 2014, and people were really into it. Some people really gravitated to it. A lot of people that don't want to get into Adobe products went that way with it, and then they shut it down, right? What I will say though is if you're someone running newer systems, like newer cameras, there are chances that Aperture cannot open up your RAW files, that can't optimize the interpretation of your files, can't run tethering, all sorts of stuff into this system because it's not updated for the last 5-6 years. So be wary of that. However, if you're a fan of it, congratulations. I'm hesitant to call it an emulator, but that's kind of what I'm getting from it. Speaking of software, Loupedeck. So Loupedeck created this tiny, ultra-versatile editing console. It is super tiny. It's like the size of a numpad. And what's really great about it is it's super customizable, and it has the dial and all that stuff. So it's really, really streamlined workflow for someone who's used to this type of setup. And I'm going to let you know that this is more of like habit, right? So Wakeham tablets are, people swear by them, but there's a learning curve. There'll be a learning curve with this as well, but the real news here is that these Loupedecks used to be the size of a traditional keyboard, and now they're this big, which means they're super thin. You can slide them into your backpack. You can have an on-the-fly, customized, fast workflow setup if you're used to this setup in the field, travel, less desk space, all sorts of stuff, and the price is around $550, which is pretty dope. I'm into it. I'm actually really considering looking into this. I do want to give it a shot and see if it corresponds with my workflow. I think it's pretty interesting, and I think you guys should look at options like that if you're doing heavy editing work. I know how frustrating it can be and how time-consuming it can be, and if you want to get more efficiency, less time working, more time making images and videos, this might be something you want to look at. That being said, more workflow options. There's a new tool in Photoshop. It's called the Object Selection tool. It's pretty interesting that it can, it's right there with the Magic Wand tool underneath, the Quick Selection tool. It's right there as the Object Selection tool. So it can actually understand what you're editing. So if you, like they're showing this example where if you wanted to select just these two women, it could sense that, okay, well, this is what's in focus. This is soft focus. Clearly, this is what we're going for as a selection, and it can actually select them. However, you can see here it's doing the best it can, but you'll still have to clean it up. But it is a pretty quick, easy way to get started. And then the saying goes even further. If you want to just select her hat, you could just go grab her hat and boom, there it is. Again, it's going to you're still gonna have to clean it up. I mean, if you see here, there's like all these stray hairs and stuff. It's not gonna grab that, right? It's still gonna look kind of artificial and stuff like that. However, if you're someone that's like, got a YouTube channel, you need to make a quick thumbnail and it's gonna be low res anyway, this is great. If you're someone that has to constantly pull product out of a background to put up for e-commerce, this is great. There's a lot of uses for this, and it's just showing how this software is getting smarter and smarter to realize what we're trying to do, as opposed to us trying to force it to think about what we're trying to make it do. So that's pretty awesome. Let's do one last bit of Canon news though. Canon is shutting down Arista cloud photo storage service. So yeah, they put out a news thing, 2014, which seems to be the year we keep talking about this this episode, and they're saying that they're ending it January 31st in 2020. So be aware of that. However, they're giving you guys incentives to go to an Adobe storage system with all sorts of incentives. Hit the link below if you're part of the Arista cloud system. Just check out what they're trying to get you to take your files over to and what you can get for doing that. There's all sorts of stuff that they're trying to do, like I think like 2 months of free storage or terabytes of cloud storage, all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. And I'm going to go into one last story that I think was it was everywhere, and I debated even bringing it up, but I think it's something we should talk about. So a videographer admits he's in over his head, and there's a lot of brides demanding refunds when their footage was horrible, and apparently he's just a kid. Look at this guy. This is him. He's just a kid. And if you hear him speak in this piece, he's totally like very get rich quick book kind of guy, boiler room talk, like it's very slick, snake oily, and he's a kid, right? He's just trying to, I don't think he realized the weight of what he's doing, but he's taking at least $1,300 to $2,000 per wedding and filming people. And you're gonna say like, well, why, how did they hire him? And there's plenty of people that can't even get their first client, and this kid's killing it, right? Well, he was killing it. Now he's got to try to find refunds. Well, apparently the kid put up a website that looked beautiful. It was all highly edited footage. Some of it might have been from a second camera shooter, who knows? But it was all slow-mo, and everything looks good in slow-mo, right? And anything as a finished product, like ripped apart with all sorts of editing that we just talked about, can make anything look great, right? So they saw that little clips and they said, I'm gonna hire this kid, which is kind of blind of them to do. What about references, right? What about knowing people that actually hired them or worked with this kid or something like that? And they didn't do that. So they basically bought in blindly, and they paid him, and they got shaky, horrible footage, like really, really terrible footage out of this kid, and they can't use it, and they can't get married again, right? As Vanessa Joy would say, like, I can't miss anything. I can't ask them to get married again. Same thing here. It's a real shame, and this is where references and people vouching for you comes into play. This is where community comes into play. That's when, if you talk to any real wedding photographer, videographer, they're in with the florists, the caterers, the venues. It's always a circle of people that can constantly do recommendations, and that's where you find out the real talent. I'm sorry, I'm like some kind of allergy going on here. That's where you find the real talent to hire and stuff like that. So if you're looking for a videographer or photographer, or you are someone that's trying to build yourself in this industry, it's all about relationships, and it's all about people that can say, hey, this is a good photographer, videographer. They work really well. They're easy to deal with. They haven't done anything shady. And let me tell you, I know a lot about shady, especially this week, right? This is an industry based on relationships, and we keep saying that, but it's a community as well, and it's a smaller industry than you could ever think. And there's a lot of people vying for jobs, and a lot of times people just get overwhelmed with jobs, and they can shift you over to giving you one of the jobs that they were gonna take on. And that's where what I talk about in Vanessa Joy's series over here, Breathe Your Passion. She comes up and ambushes me, and we start talking about how you get your first client. And look at that, industry relationships. You guys can check out this video, which is basically a discussion with me and Vanessa about where we came from as far as getting our first clients and how we continue to work. And within a world that's ever changing and evolving, especially with technologies and more people jumping into things, especially like this kid, right? He came out of nowhere. And years ago when we were shooting film and all sorts of stuff, you probably wouldn't have seen a young kid just get out there and start creating stuff. But now we can. I mean, we're self-publishing now. We are completely DIY societies going on right now, and now we're trying to get other people to give us money to do what we do. So it all comes down to, did you prove yourself? Okay, I'm gonna say personally, especially after this week, I 100% believe in the community of creatives, and I believe that there's enough work out there for all of us. We're creating more content than ever before. People are documenting things more than ever before, and people that have skill levels for people that know what kind of quality they want now but can't actually do it in their own hands are the people that hire us. You have to realize that. I always get angry people down in the comments about like how they're losing their career, and like, you have to assimilate, you have to grow, you have to change, you have to morph, you have to evolve, but on top of that, you have to constantly prove that you're able to do something that someone else would invest in you for. Make yourself investable. And that's what I'm kind of gonna ask you guys for the question of the week. What makes you guys investable? What makes someone want to engage with you? It's just like, I always refer to sound, this is gonna be so shady and I hope Adorama doesn't pull it, but I always look at business as like dating, right? Like, you're trying to get someone to engage with you. You're trying to sell yourself to someone to get something back from them. And they're gonna go, I only have so much resources and time. Why am I gonna waste it on you? And that's when you start building on yourself. It's the people that constantly have to talk about who they are and list their credits in your face right off the bat. Like, if you ever watch a YouTube video where a guy goes, hi, my name is blah, blah, Jake Roberts, and I am a fashion editorial, blah, blah, photographer right here in New York. It's like, they should have clicked on it because they already knew your name, because your name is already out there if you're such a accredited photographer. Just saying, okay? And I use Jake Roberts because he was Jake the Snake Roberts. Get it? Huh? Yeah, wrestling fans? All right, never mind. Okay, so yeah, that's the question of the week. What do you guys do to make yourself worthwhile? What do you do to make yourself seem investable or a commodity or of value to this industry, to your community? Write me down below. I'm really curious about that. And I gave you guys homework last week to go reply to at least one comment somewhere on this channel, on an old video, a new video, anywhere. And a few of you did it, so I'm throwing you guys that homework once again. I want to build a community here, because if there's one thing that'll always be there for you, it's other people. Gear comes and goes, clients come and go, but when you have solid relationships within the industry, they'll always be there. And this week alone has shown how much the community was there for me and Daniel Norton. So I'm gonna leave it there, guys. We're still doing the laptop giveaway, MSI laptop on Twitch. So if you're on Twitch, go to twitch.tv/AdoramaXP and hit follow, and you're entered in to win. Once we hit 3,000 followers, we're giving away a laptop. There's plenty of stuff coming out, a lot of stuff on the channel. Big changes coming out. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, wait, hang tight. Speaking of community, if you're in New York this Thursday, me and Daniel doing a photo critique, and Canon printers are Canon's gonna be here, and they're gonna be printing 8x10s of the work. So go to the link down below. I know it's short notice, and this video, you could be watching it like a year from now, but November 7th, 2019, 5 p.m. right here in the Adorama event space. And I really hope that there's people out there that watch this that take advantage of the Adorama event space. And if you do, let me know down below in the comments as well. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it there, guys. I know there was another story out there about some Ewok who stole some stuff from some really cool guys here in New York, but you know, there's that. Okay, guys, hit me in the comments. Don't forget to, if you just found this, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified of when videos come out on this channel, which is every day pretty much. Hit like, write some comments down below, share it around, blah, blah, all this stuff. Click all this stuff except this thing, and we're cool. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.